If you watched part 1 of this series, you'll already know that I don't pretend to be a fitness expert. I'm not a nutritionist, nor am I a personal trainer. But at one point in the not too distant past, I found myself weighing in at almost 250 pounds. I lost the extra weight using the techniques I'm going to share with you in this series of videos. I got into great shape, and I'm still having a blast riding and racing my mountain bikes. You can too. Riding a bike can be a great way to meet your personal fitness goals, and it can be a lot of fun too. But if losing weight is your goal, then you'll want to carefully consider how you're going to ride it. How you ride your bike will determine how your body responds to your efforts. Simply jumping on your bike and riding around the neighborhood once a week might improve your health, a little, but if you're expecting to lose weight, you'll probably be disappointed. However, losing weight doesn't have to be complicated. All you have to do is burn a few more calories every day than you consume. In other words, move more, eat less. I've said it before, but it really is that simple. What can make losing weight complicated is that your body is hardwired to do exactly the opposite. The human body has evolved highly complex and highly efficient processes for using and storing energy, and it neither knows nor cares how much it stores. Your body demands energy to perform every function. Even thinking consumes large quantities of energy. In fact, your brain consumes more energy than any other organ. Subsequently, the human body has developed the ability to harvest energy using 3 processes. Knowing which process your body uses at any given time is key to understanding how you should work out to lose weight. The most simple and readily available source of raw energy is stored directly in your muscles in the form of a molecule called adenine triphosphate, or ATP. This energy can be used almost instantaneously, but it's consumed very quickly, so on your bike, it's only good for very short sprints or climbs. Once it's gone, your muscles then switch to using glucose, which is stored in your liver and your bloodstream as glycogen. Think of glycogen as simply a long-chain version of glucose that your body derives from the carbohydrates you eat. Converting glucose to ATP doesn't require oxygen, and it provides a rapid supply of energy. But this too can be short-lived, because the byproduct of anaerobic glycolysis is lactic acid, which is responsible for that all-too-familiar burning, cramping sensation. As a backup, your body can harvest energy from fats, carbohydrates, and proteins. Oxidizing fat, or burning it in oxygen, results in the production of carbon dioxide, water, and of course, lots of energy. However, oxidizing fat is a slow process, and is only useful for lower levels of activity over longer periods. Your body is hardwired not to do it, and it will store fat whenever it can, rather than using it for energy. In extreme cases, your body can also harvest energy by digesting its own proteins, using the pieces as fuel. In other words, your body can literally eat its own hard-earned muscle tissue to keep you moving. Surprisingly, this happens more often than you might expect or want, especially if you don't fuel up before those strenuous workouts. To burn fat, you must combine it with oxygen. There is no other way. The length of your rides, the intensity of those rides, what you eat, and when you eat it will all influence how your body chooses to fuel your workout. But it really isn't complicated. Move more, eat less, but you gotta do both. One of the keys to consistent weight loss is diet and exercise. That said, I'm not suggesting that you go on a diet, nor will I suggest that you ride yourself into the ground every day. Quite the opposite, in fact. Another key to successful and consistent weight loss, and it's a big one, is personal discipline. If you're like me, you'll struggle with that discipline piece, so we should probably start there. My first recommendation is that you start by depriving yourself of something. It doesn't matter what it is, and it doesn't have to be a food, but giving up a high-calorie indulgence would certainly be best. The practice of giving something up is well known to help sharpen discipline. You don't have to give it up forever, but whenever you crave that something, use it as a cue to remember why you started down this path. At the start of my journey, I gave up alcohol and processed sugar, for the first 30 days anyway. That meant no candy, no beer, and no bourbon. It was harder than I thought it would be, but the payoff was huge. Sharper discipline, less calories, less weight. Bad habits might be easy to adopt and hard to break, but good habits are just as easy to adopt, and they can be hard to break too. Next, if you don't already own one, you should consider buying a heart rate monitor. You may already have one built into your smartwatch or your Fitbit or something similar. Ideally, you'll want to use a GPS bike computer with a wireless heart rate monitor. This isn't absolutely necessary, but I highly recommend that you use one. Knowing how your heart rate reacts to exercise is critical, because surprisingly, to lose weight by specifically targeting stored fat, you might want to keep the intensity of your bike rides quite low, initially at least. There are conflicting theories here, so more on this in a moment. During an easy workout, your body is quite happy burning a mixture of stored fat and carbohydrates. Pedal too fast or too hard, however, and your body can't process stored fat fast enough to keep up with the energy demand. So, it switches to using stored glycogen instead. The point at which this switch happens is called your aerobic threshold. Beyond this threshold, your muscles produce lactic acid, which your body immediately tries to neutralize with available oxygen. That's why you breathe harder and why your heart rate increases when you pick up the pace. You can maintain this pace almost indefinitely, at least as long as you can stand to be in the saddle. But you need to maintain an adequate supply of fuel. Pedal harder still, and eventually your body reaches a point where it can't neutralize the lactic acid fast enough. The point at which this happens is called your lactate threshold. You can't sustain this level of effort for very long, or you'll start to experience cramps and burning muscle pain, and your body will eventually insist that you slow down or stop until you can pay off your lactate debt with oxygen. Lots of oxygen. That's why they call it sucking wind. Your aerobic threshold and your lactate threshold will occur at very specific heart rates, and both are a function of your maximum attainable heart rate. That's why I recommend you measure your heart rate when you ride. Believe it or not, your maximum heart rate is not dependent on how fit you are. Most experts agree that your maximum attainable heart rate is actually a function of your age. However, those same experts will often bicker over how to precisely calculate your maximum heart rate. But the generally accepted calculation is to subtract your age from 220, regardless of your gender. When I first heard this, I stubbornly refused to believe it, so of course I had to climb on my bike and prove to myself that I couldn't be defined by my age. I was wrong. If you feel compelled to find this out for yourself, make sure you get a routine physical first and tell your doctor how you plan to torture yourself. Stressing your heart to its max is not smart, regardless of how old you are or how fit you think you are. So, once you've calculated your maximum heart rate, what next? Again, most experts agree that your heart rate should be mathematically split into 5 discrete zones. Zone 1 starts a little above your resting heart rate. Zone 2 is your aerobic zone. If you're not using a heart rate monitor, you'll know you're riding in Zone 2 if you can maintain a conversation with your buddies. If you're riding by yourself, you'll know you're in Zone 2 if you can ride and still breathe comfortably through your nose. The top of Zone 2 is marked by your aerobic threshold, which occurs at approximately 70% of your maximum heart rate. Stay in Zone 2, and your body will predominantly burn stored fats, as well as a small percentage of carbohydrates. Zones 3 and 4 are your endurance zones. Zone 3 occurs between 70 and 80% of your maximum heart rate, and Zone 4 ends at 90% of your max heart rate, which is also where you'll find your lactate threshold. This threshold is where fitness starts to bend the math a little, but 90% of your max HR is a good estimation of your lactate threshold, which represents your maximum sustainable effort. From 90 to 100% heart rate is Zone 5, which is referred to as the red zone. Now the math gets a little fuzzy in Zone 5, so we'll deal with that at a later date. So, how do you use all this data to help you lose fat? Well, it depends who you ask, of course. Contemporary wisdom tends to agree that to burn most calories, you should consider high-intensity interval training. This type of training employs repeated bursts of Zone 4 and Zone 5 effort, with short periods of rest in between. The math does support this wisdom, because your body will continue to glow long after your workout is over. However, to make this work, you need to feed these workouts. Remember, any effort above Zone 2 requires glycogen, not fat. So, if you don't carefully control the quality and quantity of food that you consume, you may find that you actually gain weight doing high-intensity training. It's hard work, too. Instead, especially if you're new at this, what I suggest is fasted Zone 2 rides. In other words, do easy rides in the morning before breakfast. When you wake up, your body is already in a fat-burning mode, because presumably you haven't eaten all night. That's why it's called break fast. On your ride, keep your heart rate between 60 and 70% of your max HR, and you'll burn mostly fat. Caffeine can help boost this effect too, but not if you mix it with cream and sugar. I happen to like black coffee, I always have, but not everyone can tolerate it. If you're not a coffee drinker, there are countless other zero-sugar caffeine drinks that will achieve the same effect. I always pre-hydrate my rides with Spark from Advocare. They didn't pay me to say that, but it just works. You may already know a Spark distributor, but if not, there's also a link in the comments below. Despite what you might have read on the internet, there is no magic pill that will melt away fat. To lose weight, you must increase your metabolism and reduce your fat intake. In other words, move more, eat less. You don't have to go on some crazy diet, but you'll probably want to change your diet and become more conscious of what you eat, how much of it you eat, and when you eat it. You don't have to avoid carbs. In fact, they are essential if you plan to raise your heart rate above 70% of your max HR. Just make sure that you plan to burn them right away. What you should avoid is eating foods that are both high in carbs and high in fat, like French fries. The good news is that you can eat all the proteins you want, and you can even combine those proteins with fats or carbs, as long as you don't mix fats with carbs. However, I highly recommend that you opt for a reduced fat diet that's rich in complex carbohydrates, lean proteins, and leafy greens. If by now you've decided that you're going to ignore all this diet bullshit and just ride your bike,
I got some bad news for you. Because while it is possible to lose weight with diet alone, it's virtually impossible to lose weight by riding yourself to a thinner you. You have to change your diet.
It doesn't mean that you have to starve yourself, but it does mean that you should start to think of food more as fuel rather than something you do for comfort or to relieve boredom. Before you put anything in your mouth, have a plan for how your body will use it. If you don't, your body will be happy to store it for you until you figure it out. So, let's go over this again. First, give something up. This will help you sharpen your discipline, and while you're at it, set a goal, write it down, and put it where you can see it. Secondly, calculate your maximum attainable heart rate, 220 minus your age, and then find yourself a heart rate monitor. This will help you know how hard to ride your bike, or if you're riding it too hard. Thirdly, ride your bike before breakfast 2 or 3 times a week, but don't let your heart rate get more than 70% of your max HR. Stay in zone 2, and your body will burn mostly fat during your ride. Fourthly, try to reduce your calorie intake, preferably by avoiding fatty foods and cutting portions. Try to think of food as fuel, and know when and how you plan to burn that fuel. Remember, there's no such thing as a cheat day. If you cheat, you've wasted a day or more, and your body will keep score by storing the calories for you. Above all, riding your bike should be fun. If you're having fun, none of this other stuff really matters. But if you can discipline yourself to move more and eat less and still have fun, you might just find that riding your bike will change your life. It certainly changed mine. No matter how you plan to do it, if you're trying to lose weight, it's going to be a long ride, but it's worth it. Let me know how you do in the comments below, and you might just inspire someone else to follow in your tracks. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up and click the Darwin Rides logo at the bottom of the screen. Subscribing to the channel will ensure you don't miss any of the videos in this series, because in part 3, we'll take a look at how you can build muscle and improve your stamina and speed. As always, I hope you enjoyed the ride. Let's do it again sometime.